Prices in Hungary were doubling every 15 hours. That is not an estimate. That is the documented rate recorded by Hungary's central bank during the worst hyperinflation in recorded human history. Imagine it is July 1946. You are in Budapest. A man named Martin, a mathematics teacher for 23 years, is standing outside a flower shop. He has taught exponents, logarithms, compound interest. He understands how numbers behave at scale. He has spent his career explaining to children how quantities grow and shrink. This morning, the shopkeeper will not quote him a price. Not because there is no flour. There is flour. The shopkeeper simply says the number changes before he can finish writing it on the chalkboard. He says, "Come back tomorrow. Bring something other than currency. A cup of coffee affordable at breakfast is beyond reach by midnight." The mathematics are not complicated. Martin has taught them for 2 decades. What he cannot teach, what no one taught him, is what to do when the numbers themselves stop meaning anything. 3 streets away, a widow named Zofia lives above a butcher shop. She never attended university. She cannot define inflation. She does not know what a government bond is. When her husband died in 1943, he left her 2 things: the apartment she owns outright, and a small leather pouch containing 11 gold coins that had been in his family since the Habsburg era. She did not choose these assets strategically. She inherited them by accident. By August 1946, when Hungary replaced its destroyed currency with a new one backed by limited reserves, Zofia could purchase Martin's entire apartment building with a fraction of her gold. Her real estate had not merely held its value. It had appreciated against every other form of wealth because so many other forms had been annihilated around it. Her gold had become one of the only functioning media of exchange in a country where the official currency had ceased to mean anything at all. Martin lost everything. Zofia multiplied her position several times over. They breathed the same air. They walked the same streets. They lived under the same government. The difference between them was not intelligence. It was not foresight. It was not political connection. The difference was the form in which their wealth was held on the day the system fractured. This is not a story about luck. It is a documented mechanical process that operates with the regularity of gravity. When a currency system breaks, wealth does not evaporate. It migrates. It moves from one category of holding to another with such consistency that you can map the destination before the journey begins, simply by studying every previous instance in which it occurred. Once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. There is a widespread misunderstanding about what happens during an economic collapse. People believe that collapse destroys wealth, that it functions like a fire, burning everything, leaving everyone equally impoverished in shared suffering. This is false. A collapse is not a fire. A collapse is a river changing course. The water does not disappear. It flows through different channels, irrigating different fields and drowning what was previously dry ground. A currency is not wealth. A currency is a unit of measurement applied to wealth. When a government expands the quantity of currency beyond what the productive capacity of the economy can support, the measurement unit shrinks. Prices adjust upward, but they do not adjust evenly. Some goods reprice within hours, others take weeks. Contracts, pension obligations, bond coupons, and salary agreements remain locked at their old nominal values for extended periods. During this adjustment lag, a transfer takes place. Wealth flows from those receiving payments, fixed in the depreciating unit, to those controlling assets whose values adjust upward with, or ahead of, the depreciation. The transfer is not announced. No official declares it. No legislation authorizes it. It simply happens automatically as an arithmetic consequence of the measurement unit's failure. And the assets that receive this transferred wealth are not random. They are the same ones every time, across every documented instance in the modern monetary era. 6 categories. 6 reservoirs into which the river always flows when the old channel breaks. Understanding the structure is the difference between standing on the bank watching the water and being carried by it. The first reservoir is productive land. Not speculative acreage purchased for future development, not vacant lots waiting for zoning approval. Productive land, soil that grows crops, pasture that feeds animals, forest that yields timber, land that produces something tangible, something caloric, something a human body requires regardless of what any government is doing with its balance sheet. The reason productive land absorbs wealth during monetary breakdown is rooted in something older than finance: biology. People eat every day. They eat when the economy is booming. They eat when the currency is worthless. The demand for food output is essentially non-negotiable. This gives productive land a property no financial instrument possesses. Its output has a floor value determined by human physiology rather than by monetary policy. During the Weimar Republic's disintegration between 1921 and 1923, rural Germany experienced something that would have seemed impossible 2 years earlier. Farmers became the most powerful economic actors in the country. Not industrialists, not bankers, farmers, because they controlled the one output every other person in the economy needed and could not substitute: Urban factory workers who had been significantly wealthier than rural farmers before the inflation found themselves traveling to the countryside offering family heirlooms, jewelry, pianos, furniture, in exchange for potatoes, butter, and eggs. The real value of farmland, measured in what it could produce and what that production could command, did not just hold. It expanded. Farmers who entered the crisis owning land and livestock emerged from it holding not only their original assets, but the accumulated possessions of an urban middle class stripped clean by currency destruction. The pattern repeated in Zimbabwe between 2006 and 2009, where functional farmland became the scarcest and most sought-after asset in the economy. In Argentina, the great estates of the Pampas have served this function across a century of repeated monetary crisis. The peso has been redenominated, replaced, devalued, and destroyed multiple times. Through every cycle, the ranches producing beef and grain maintained their real value. Because global demand for Argentine agricultural output exists independently of whatever the Argentine government does with its currency. The grass grows, the cattle eat, the grain is harvested, the world buys it in dollars. The peso's collapse is, from the perspective of productive land, almost irrelevant. The mechanism is always identical. Productive land generates output that must be consumed. That output reprices instantly in the new monetary reality. The land itself cannot be printed, debased, or legislated out of existence. The second reservoir is monetary metals, gold and silver, not as decoration, not as jewelry, but as the default alternative currency that every civilization in recorded history has reverted to when its official money failed. This is not ideology. This is network effect. Gold functions as money during crisis because it has functioned as money during every previous crisis. That history creates a self-reinforcing cycle of acceptance. When you offer gold to a merchant whose currency has just died, you do not need to explain what gold is. 3,000 years of monetary history have already made the argument for you. The French Revolution provides one of the cleanest demonstrations. In 1789, the revolutionary government introduced the assignat, a paper currency initially backed by confiscated church lands. As expenses grew, more assignats were printed, then more, then vastly more. By 1795, the assignat had lost over 99% of its original value. Those who had converted savings into gold early preserved their wealth across a 6-year period that destroyed the savings of virtually every citizen who trusted the paper. The gold generated no yield, it paid no interest. It simply maintained purchasing power while everything measured in assignats lost theirs. During the stagflationary crisis of the 1970s, gold moved from $35 per ounce to $850, a 24-fold increase in a decade. Not because gold became more useful industrially, because the dollar was being systematically debased through deficit spending, money creation, and negative real interest rates. Gold measured the debasement the way a thermometer measures fever. It did not cause the fever. It reported it. The mechanism requires no trust, only arithmetic. Gold supply cannot be expanded by political decision. It grows at roughly 1.5% per year, constrained by the physics of extraction. When a currency's supply grows at 20, 50, or 100% per year, the ratio shifts violently in gold's favor. More currency units chasing the same quantity of metal produces a higher nominal price per unit of metal. The mathematics are not complicated. The third reservoir is operating businesses with pricing power. And this distinction is essential because most analyses miss it entirely. Not all businesses survive monetary collapse. Many are destroyed. Businesses with thin margins, heavy debt denominated in foreign currency, dependence on imported inputs or products, consumers can defer. These collapse alongside the currency. They are victims of the transfer, not beneficiaries. But a specific category behaves differently. Businesses producing goods or services that people cannot stop purchasing, facing limited competition, able to raise prices continuously to match or exceed the rate of currency depreciation, maintain real profit margins. Their revenue in purchasing power terms hold steady, while the wages of their workers, renegotiated less frequently, lag behind. The business captures the spread between instantly adjusting output prices and slowly adjusting input costs. In Argentina, during the chronic inflation of the 1980s, companies controlling food distribution, energy production, and essential consumer goods became dominant survivors. They raised prices daily, sometimes hourly. The mechanism was brutal in its simplicity. If you produce something people must buy today, you can name tomorrow's price. If you work for a salary that adjusts quarterly, you absorb the difference. In Turkey, during the high inflation period of the 1990s and early 2000s, conglomerates with diversified operations across essential sectors consolidated their market positions. Smaller competitors failed. Businesses that could not adjust prices fast enough went bankrupt. The survivors expanded, acquiring failed competitors' assets, market share, and customer bases at distressed prices. The inflation did not merely preserve these companies, It made them larger, more dominant, and more profitable in real terms than they had been before the crisis began. The mechanism is structural. Businesses with inelastic demand pass currency depreciation through to customers. Those without that ability cannot. After every inflationary episode, market concentration increases because survivors have absorbed the casualties. This pattern is observable, measurable, and consistent across every documented case. The fourth reservoir is claims denominated in foreign currency, specifically the dominant global reserve currency. When a country's currency is collapsing, assets denominated in a stronger foreign currency appreciate in local terms by exactly the rate at which the local currency falls. If local currency loses half its value, dollar-denominated claims double in local purchasing power. If it loses 90%, those claims multiply tenfold. During the Asian financial crisis of 1997, this mechanism operated across an entire region simultaneously. The Thai baht, Indonesian rupiah, Korean won, and Malaysian ringgit all collapsed. Those holding dollar-denominated assets saw their local purchasing power multiply dramatically. Consider one family in Jakarta. In early 1997, they had converted the equivalent of $15,000 into a dollar-denominated account, a decision that felt overly cautious at the time. By early 1998, with the rupiah having lost over 80% of its value, that same $15,000 could purchase Jakarta real estate that had previously required 10 times as much, not because the buildings were worth less, because the currency in which local prices were quoted had disintegrated. In Venezuela, from 2014 onward, anyone holding dollars experienced purchasing power growth that defies description. The bolivar moved from roughly 6 per dollar in 2013 to millions per dollar by 2018. A Venezuelan family that had converted even modest savings into dollars could sustain itself for years. Those without dollars were forced into barter, trading household goods and labor for necessities. The constraint this reveals is uncomfortable. The most effective short-term preservation strategy during currency collapse is holding another nation's currency. Their safety is denominated in someone else's sovereignty. That is the financial equivalent of living in someone else's house. You're safe only as long as the landlord remains stable. The fifth reservoir is real property in locations where demand is structurally sustained. This is distinct from productive agricultural land. Urban real estate does not produce food. Its value derives from location scarcity, the inability to create more of a specific place, a specific intersection, a specific waterfront, a specific commercial district. Physics constrains the supply of locations in the way printing presses constrain nothing about paper currency. In Moscow, after the Soviet collapse, the mechanism illustrated itself with particular clarity. When Yeltsin's government privatized apartments in the early 1990s, residents were given vouchers to claim ownership of the units they occupied. Those in centrally located Moscow apartments acquired assets worth hundreds of thousands of dollars within a decade. Those in peripheral districts, or those who sold their vouchers for immediate cash, received a fraction of the long-term value. Same city, same reform, same moment in history, vastly different outcomes, determined entirely by location. In Weimar, Germany, Berlin property owners who held their nerve emerged from the hyperinflation with assets not only intact, but relatively more valuable. Because the crisis had destroyed so many other forms of wealth, that real estate's share of total surviving wealth had increased. The critical constraint is debt. Property owners with clear title survived. Those leveraged with foreign currency mortgages were often destroyed because the mechanism making foreign currency claims powerful for holders makes them lethal for debtors. The mortgage doubles in local terms while property income collapses. The distinction between unencumbered and leveraged real estate is the difference between catching wealth and drowning in it. The sixth category is harder to quantify, but equally consistent across the historical record: specialized human capital. Skills. Commanding compensation in real terms, because the services cannot be deferred or substituted. In Budapest, in 1946, government employees on fixed salaries experienced complete financial annihilation. A civil servant's pengo salary became meaningless within months, but a surgeon in the same city could demand payment in food, goods, or gold, because a patient with appendicitis cannot defer surgery until the currency stabilizes. The surgeon's skill repriced instantly. The civil servant's salary was the casualty. In Venezuela's collapse, mechanics who could repair the aging vehicle fleet commanded payment in dollars or goods. Electricians, plumbers, anyone whose skills addressed immediate physical needs operated in a parallel economy where compensation tracked real value. University professors and government administrators, whose roles existed within the formal currency-denominated economy, saw their living standards collapse regardless of their credentials. The implication extends well beyond crisis periods. The type of skill matters less than the repricing flexibility it carries. A highly credentialed professional earning a government salary in a fragile currency is more vulnerable than a tradesperson who can charge per job in whatever medium of exchange is functional. The hierarchy of formal credentialing inverts entirely. What matters is not the title. It is the pricing power attached to the service. Now examine what all 6 categories share. Every one of them exists outside the unit of measurement that is failing. They do not depend on the currency maintaining its value. They do not depend on the government honoring its commitments. They do not depend on the banking system functioning. They simply are what they are, producing what they produce, occupying the space they occupy, regardless of what numbers are printed on the pieces of paper circulating through the economy. On the opposite side, the assets destroyed share their own common feature. They are promises. A bank deposit is a promise by the bank to return purchasing power. A pension is a promise to pay specified income in the future. A bond is a promise to return principal with interest. A salary is a promise to compensate at a rate reflecting current costs. Every one of these promises is denominated in the currency. Everyone is only as reliable as the currency is stable. When the currency fails, the promises do not technically break. They are honored in nominal terms. The pension check arrives. The bank balance is intact. The bond pays its coupon. But the purchasing power inside those nominal figures has been drained out quietly through a mechanism requiring no announcement, no default, no bankruptcy filing, and no act of overt theft. This is the most precise description of what occurred in Hungary in 1946. The postal worker received every filler owed to him, every payment made on time, in full, precisely as promised. He was paid exactly what he was owed, and he was destroyed by it, because the promise was denominated in a unit that no longer meant anything. The historical record on who absorbs the cost of this transfer is unambiguous. The middle class pays, every single time. The wealthy hold diversified assets by nature. Land, metals, businesses, foreign currency, real estate across jurisdictions. Diversification is a natural consequence of having enough wealth to spread across multiple categories simultaneously. The poor are paradoxically less damaged in relative terms. They did not have savings to lose. They did not hold bonds going to zero. Their condition was already precarious, and while it worsens, the relative decline is smaller because there was less to lose. The middle class occupies maximum vulnerability. They saved. They followed the rules. They trusted institutions, deposited money in banks, bought government bonds, paid into pension systems, built financial security on instruments denominated entirely in the currency. They stand in the largest numbers with the greatest concentration of exposure directly in the path of the transfer. The data confirms this across every documented episode. After Weimar, the German middle class was devastated, while certain industrialists consolidated their positions. After the Latin American crisis of the 1980s, middle-class savings were annihilated across multiple countries, while foreign capital returned to purchase assets at discounts. After the Asian crisis of 1997, local currency household savings were destroyed, while dollar-denominated investors acquired real assets at fractions of their previous value. The pattern produces a specific statistical signature. Median wealth falls, mean wealth recovers faster, the gap widens. This signature appears following every major monetary disruption in the last century. It is the statistical fingerprint of the transfer in operation. The global financial system currently carries a volume of promises, denominated in currencies that exceeds the productive capacity of the global economy to honor in real terms. Global government debt exceeds $100 trillion. Estimates of unfunded entitlement obligations in the United States, including Social Security and Medicare, range across tens of trillions in present value terms, depending on methodology and assumptions. Corporate debt, household debt, and financial sector obligations add further layers. These promises can be honored in one of 3 ways. Real economic growth sufficient to service all obligations at current real value. The arithmetic does not support this at the scale required. Explicit default, honest, transparent, to when politically impossible for any democratic government facing voters whose savings would be directly eliminated. Or implicit default through currency debasement. Honor every promise, nominally, while allowing real purchasing power to erode through inflation. This third option has been chosen, implicitly or explicitly, in every historical case where the first 2 proved insufficient. It requires no formal announcement. It produces no official default. It leaves the institutional paperwork in perfect order, while quietly transferring wealth from those holding promises to those holding things. Consider what the complete pattern reveals about the nature of wealth itself. The things that survive are not clever. They are not sophisticated. They are not products of financial engineering or quantitative modeling. They are ancient: soil, metal, essential production, location, useful skill, the capacity to generate something a human body needs, regardless of what any institution is doing with its balance sheet. The things destroyed are equally consistent. They are promises, future claims, paper denominated in a unit controlled by an institution with an incentive to debase it. They are sophisticated, modern, precisely documented. and they fail every time when the unit they are denominated in fails. Martin understood mathematics. He understood numbers, equations, and proofs, but the numbers on his bond certificates meant nothing when the unit behind those numbers dissolved. Zofia understood none of it. She simply held things that did not require functioning currency to have value. Same city, same collapse, same transfer. Two different outcomes, separated entirely by the form in which wealth was held on the day the measurement stick broke. The question is not whether this mechanism will activate again. The conditions that activate it are present in more countries, at greater scale and with deeper structural entrenchment than at any previous point in documented history. The question is whether the people who will be affected understand, before it activates, which side of the transfer they are standing on. Because by the time the transfer is visible, the river has already changed course. The old channel is dry. The new channel is flowing through ground chosen not by anyone's decision, but by the unchangeable physics of what holds value and what does not. When the measuring stick breaks, the pattern is already in motion. It has always been in motion. Leave a comment with this question. Looking at the 6 reservoirs documented here, productive land, monetary metals, pricing power businesses, foreign currency claims, unencumbered real estate, specialized skills, which of these is most accessible to you right now, and which represents the largest gap in your current position? I read every comment. The answers shape what this channel examines next. The transfer does not wait for understanding. It only requires that the conditions are met. They have been met before. The record is unambiguous on what happened next.